thank you so much, Pranav and Animesh, for doing this. Really appreciate your time. I think we have been coming across a lot of finance professionals looking to understand how to either break into a new type of finance role within their organization, or perhaps leave the organization, find a new role where they can chart a better career trajectory over a period of time. So that was the main reason we thought this would be a helpful session to have for a lot of people here. Now, I'll just share a bit of background about myself. For people who don't know, I'm the founder of Pivot, and Pivot is a startup platform that helps people make smooth and successful career transitions. So, if you're thinking about changing not just your company, but even your domain or industry, we help you land your target role by doing a few different things that we have found to be most helpful and effective when people are making any sort of inflection point changes in their career. That's about me. I think I would turn it over to Animesh, you first. You can just share a bit about yourself and your journey so far. That would be very helpful.
So, thank you for the opportunity, Arjun. I glad to be here. Brief about myself. So, I have close to 18 years of experience in financial planning and analysis, institutional investor relations, business finance, finance transformation, corporate finance, M&A for both large cap and mid cap setups. And throughout my career, I have worked for the global IT companies ranging from 200 million to 20 million dollar organizations. And by qualification, I'm a engineer at a graduate level, and then MBA in finance and strategy, and then I did my CFA, then CMA, and then recently completed CFO program from IIM Calcutta. So that's me.
All right, great. Thanks, Animesh. Pranav, do you want to share a bit about your background and journey as well?
Sure, Arjun. Thanks, Arjun, first of all, for this opportunity. And hi, Animesh, meeting for the first time. Looking forward for this discussion. So, a brief introduction about myself. Around 15 plus years of experience. I did my CS and then did my CA. Somewhat similar to what domain Animesh also belongs. I've primarily been into FP&A, business finance, investor relationship. I started my career with investment banking in Nomura, and then after that, I've always been more prolonging my journey towards corporate finance. Out of this 15 years, last 6, 7 years, I've been primarily working into different startups, leading into FP&A and business finance function, and looking forward for this 1 hour discussion.
Okay, perfect. So, I want to set up the basis for today's discussion. I mean, we help both kinds of folks who are, let's say, in the first 5 to 10 years of their career and are still figuring out whether they're in the right field, whether they should be looking for a new type of role. So when we come across these kind of folks, typically you can think of an accountant, right? Like a person who has CA, has worked in accounting, auditing, that kind of a role, and they're either hitting a ceiling, within their company, or they are not enjoying the day to day of accounting, and they're looking for an exit outside of accounting. They want to build a career still within finance, but not necessarily just within accounting, right? So they're looking for any sort of a finance role which can give them a little more strategic work outside of the day to day minutia of kind of auditing all your financial statements. That's one type of person. The other type of person that comes to us frequently is person with 10 plus years experience, anywhere between, I would say, generally 10 to 15 years experience. And, they have usually a decent track record in finance or a related domain. And they have been able to, been able to make a mark in their career. But at this point, they're looking for a step up in their career. So they don't want to necessarily work as an individual contributor or a manager at a junior mid level. They want to really kind of catapult their career into a senior leadership role. So with this in background, we will discuss most of our questions. So feel free to contextualize your insights, your experiences for both kinds of people, whoever you think you're more equipped to talk about. Um, So the first thing that I want to ask, and we can start with Animesh, you, is for the first kind of person that I was mentioning. A lot of times there's confusion. At least we experience that when they come to us, asking what are the right types of role that I should be pursuing in finance, because most people are well aware of accounting, right? That's the well-established role. But outside of that, there's very limited visibility. I mean, people know and have heard of things like FP&A, they have heard of treasury, they have heard of controllership, all these different types of roles. And maybe even now with fintech coming, into explosion, there's a lot of fintech oriented roles as well. And then you have things outside of corporate finance, which we won't even necessarily touch today. But can you give us maybe a high level of how should a person who is evaluating their career within finance should structure their thought process with regard to different roles that they should consider?
So, Arjun, how I see the finance function in general, and obviously each company and each industry will have a different set of requirements, how the overall finance organization is structured. But there are always two broad categories that you will see in the overall finance hierarchy. So one will be the core functions, where when we say core functions, this will be everything from procure to pay, statutory audit, transfer pricing, global taxation compliance, uh, internal audit, O2C, order to cash functions. All these functions will be the core functions of finance, which usually the finance professionals are associated with. I'll say when the finance actually become part of a core requirement for the industry, maybe 50 years back. So these are the functions which are always there and which are still the core functions for finance. Second category, I will say all these strategic functions, which you briefly alluded to, whether we talk about corporate FP&A or business FP&A, and both are different. Corporate FP&A is more around the overall organization. How are we trending? What are we doing at the overall org level? Business FP&A is more specific to the kind of business hierarchy which you are following in that specific organization. It can be a metric structure, it can be a geo-specific P&L, all that is business FP&A. And then obviously you have mergers and acquisitions, you have institutional and investor relations, and banking and treasury, I'll kind of put it in middle because it again really depends on the organization, that is it a strategic function or a core function, how are they managing their cash flows and their receivables and hedging and all those stuff. But just to add, I think one more branch which I have recently seen is kind of now becoming more and more common across the organization, which is not an exception anymore. We have started seeing that automation or AI and ML kind of is kind of becoming a core requirement for the overall finance role. Then we also have ERP specialist or new entity integration for companies which are looking for both, especially growing through inorganic routes. They might be having a specialized function, sub function for new entity integration. So that is kind of a third category, but it depends on how that company is actually operating and what part of their growth cycle they are in currently.
Understood. I think that's a good structure to think about, strategic versus kind of core finance functions. And I think, Pranav, my question to you, kind of similar to it, but from a slightly different angle, is, you know, given your experience, I'm sure you have formed an opinion with regard to what's an average career trajectory in corporate finance. Typically, a person who's, starting off at a junior analyst level, how do they typically progress within corporate finance, let's say from an entry level or junior level position all the way up to senior level? And what variations today are you starting to see in that linear career trajectory?
No, I think from a growth perspective, something similar to what Animesh was also saying, like every company has its own way of dealing with growth. Let's say in a startup kind of an environment, there are very few layers. Your efforts are much more visible over there compared to a larger organization where it is more of a process driven, hierarchy driven compared to a startup kind of an environment. So typically you start at an analyst, junior analyst level, which are normally the graduates who are not or either pursuing a postgraduate program. So once you are essentially a CA or an MBA, then you essentially start with a managerial or a senior managerial level.
So once you are reaching at that particular level, essentially you are around 5, 6 years of experience. The nature of job essentially keeps on changing over there because you are not just somebody who is doing a ground level work, but at the same point in time, your inputs are also needed from a business decision making standpoint because you are making presentations for senior management. You are giving your own recommendations. So that's when you are somewhere in the middle wherein you are essentially being treated as a next leader, like a head of a particular business unit, like a business finance or a head of a FP&A. So you should start thinking more from a leadership skill set standpoint, like how you are effective in your communication with senior leadership. How are you good at storytelling? Because that is something very important when you're dealing with somebody who is from a non-finance background. Uh, Data crunching, data analysis. Well, you have a lot of these sophisticated tools right now which are available, which essentially helps you to crack the data, but you need somebody to essentially understand and analyze that problem statement. So that is where your inputs come more, like where your commercial acumen goes and how you're able to analyze the data in a much more different way. And not only just from a company standpoint, but get a macro understanding as well, like how the industry trends are going, what is the competition doing, get more geography related understanding as well. So as in when you progress in your career, all these softer aspects becomes all the more important. If you see in today's world, the background of the CFO, there are very few CFO right now who are coming from a controllership background, which is the like erstwhile 15, 20 years back where it used to happen. Now the focus is shifted more on how better you are able to do a business finance partnering, how well you are dealing with your investors, with the board members. So it's an internal and external both put together makes you a very good CFO. So that's where the shift is happening right now.
I think that's a good insight, Pranav. I think it was helpful to understand where things are moving towards, and that would be also a good segue to kind of the next part of this discussion, which is mostly understanding what are some of the emerging trends and skill requirements. I think both of you, Animesh and Pranav, have alluded to a couple of things, right? That are up and coming, like data analytics is definitely one of them. Going beyond internal stakeholder management, like looking outside the organization, whether it's board members or shareholders. And then I think, Animesh, you also mentioned about AI/ML playing more of a critical role in coming years, which has pretty much touched, I would say, every single domain and will proliferate, more and more in the coming years. So the first thing that I would like to really understand is, if you had to highlight one big trend in corporate finance right now, which you believe is impacting people's careers, the way they are thinking about, working for the next 5 to 10 years in a finance role, what's that one trend and how is it impacting people's skill requirements or companies expectations? Animesh, we'll start with you.
Okay. So, to be very honest, Arjun, saying that it's only one trend which we are seeing is driving everything. So just let me try to maybe give a couple of points how I am seeing things are changing a lot. So first thing is the data analysis. When we say data analysis, how the data used to be analyzed till 5 years back versus how it is analyzed now, that itself has changed a lot. Because I think in the digital transformation we have 3 4 different layers how you see the data. So having reliable and consistent data across multiple sources, then translating them to primary metrics and dashboards. I think most of the companies are somewhere at this level right now. But now one more, I'll say, which has become more relevant, that how the numbers which finance is generating impacts our whole organization. So that's where cross function metrics becomes very important. So for example, attrition rate actually impacts financials of an organization. I'm just giving you that as an example. Or how many sales leads are getting converted eventually to sales, it's actually a finance impact. So every single function in the organization have a finance impact. So how these cross function metrics are used as a first step to drive the business intelligence. When I say business intelligence, that's where actually AI ML come into play. So for deal, what are my chances? Actually, my AI ML can give you that insight depending on the past record of that sales guy. Is it a new logo which we are pursuing? What is our expertise in that particular domain? What is my history in the similar kind of customer? A lot of obviously parameters goes into it. But how you see data, the data analysis as a trend itself has changed a lot. And second thing, which Pranav also alluded to, I believe, the stakeholder management. This is something as finance, I'll say, and I am part of finance function when I say this. So I think where we as finance people don't put effort is in the art of storytelling. So the stakeholder management, how to drive our point across, how to make sure that everyone understands what we are trying to do, why it is important for the organization, and why a decision should be taken. That is something which is required at both internal and external level to become a successful CFO or to drive your point across. So storytelling in the context of the stakeholder that you are addressing, what you are trying to achieve, that is another very, very important thing, because CFO is no more a back-end role. It requires a lot of front ending. It requires a lot of cross-function management. So that is another trend which I see is
So,
evolving very,
Animesh,
very.
just to interject there and quickly ask you, because that's a very good point that you have touched upon. Is that more because of the lack of, let's say, tangible business insights that, let's say, leadership is looking for from finance, or is it more of a communication skill, art of persuasion, art of storytelling that needs to be strengthened further among finance professionals? Like, which one plays more of an important role?
So, Arjun, to be very honest, I see them as the same thing. Why I say? Because any tangible, everyone is looking for inputs. Everyone is looking for information. That's very obvious that business functions are looking for insights. But why? How those insights are relevant for them? That is something which is also required to present when you are presenting certain information. That's where the storytelling comes into play, because at the end of day, when people look at the data, when they listen to your finance teams, what's in it for me, that's the first thing. Let's be very honest about it. That's how the professional world works. So for that, you have to tell them why this data is important for you, why you should look at this data. So these are actually converging together, the quality of data and how you present that data.
Yeah, got it. Got it. I think, yeah, that's helpful. That's helpful. I think they both are intrinsically sort
Yeah.
of interconnected. One cannot go without the other. I think that makes sense. Pranav, so just want to loop you in into the same topic. Like, from your perspective, again, what are some of the key trends that are shaping, what employers are looking for in candidates today in finance roles? What are the most sought after skills and competencies if you want to be successful in a corporate finance role today?
Yeah, so there are a couple of aspects to it. Like one, so now as Animesh was also mentioning about, the finance team essentially is now termed as a central repository of the entire company's data. Like I can give you one example. Like a couple of years back when we were having an annual operating plan discussion with all the senior leadership. So first they started with finance slides presentation, then we had the sales, marketing, engineering, and HR presenting their data. After that meeting, CEO came up to us and said that while finance has presented data like sales, we need so many revenue targets, marketing, we need so many leads. But every time the other department was presenting their own data, they were coming with some different numbers. So they were coming with the assumption like while finance has presented X number, but we have these assumptions, we are presenting Y number. But CEO at the end of the meeting said, whatever finance presents to me is the final number for me, because one is that they will be completely unbiased on whatever is happening in the company. They will show me the true picture. They are responsible to the board. At the same point in time, they have the connecting dots. They are able to understand all the departments, what are the impact that they are doing, what impact it would have in my P&L reporting, what is the impact it will have on my EBITDA. So that was a very bold statement, which has made a significant transition over a period of time. That FP&A and business finance are essentially termed as a central repository for all the data that is happening. Even if like a sales op or RevOps team would present X data, CEO would come back and fall back on what actually the finance is presenting. So that is one big transition that I've seen. Now, where it comes to candidates' abilities, essentially to understand the number crunching ability, like to essentially identify if there is some trends which are offbeat, which are not making any sense. So it's just not about copy pasting the numbers, creating charts, but at the same point in time, understanding each and every metric that is important in the business. Like when I was working in a telecom company in Vodafone, like we used to analyze for every tower my cost per minute, cost per MB. Now imagine Vodafone kind of a company, 26 circles, to more than 50,000 towers. Now, how do you analyze all this data? That is where the key skills come in. That with all these data available with you, what decision making you are able to make, how helpful you are to the organization. These are some of the very important traits. Technical skills are something which you can learn over a period of time, but a business acumen, commercial sense, how you understand or react to a given problem or a situation, those are the key things which are expected now from a finance person. It doesn't matter whether you're a CA, MBA, engineer. At the end of the day, how you address a given problem, case scenario, and whether you are able to understand the overall objective of the organization and then deliver the results. Those are the key aspects which are important in these days.
Yeah, I think so. One theme that's coming across, loud and clear, I think both Animesh and Pranav, you have highlighted is the fact that I think there is more and more focus from business leaders to get, cross-functional insights, which may still be housed within the, finance center of excellence, so to speak. And for that, you can't just stick to the typical financial metrics. You may have to go beyond the typical ones like revenue, profitability, the typical balance sheet and income statement metrics. So I think that's definitely coming loud and clear. And the other thing is, I think handling data well and being able to extract insights and presenting those insights in a persuasive manner so they tell a story and are able to influence the right stakeholders to make the right business decisions. I think those things are coming across quite well. Just a quick question: if there is one financial tool today that you believe professionals at mid level should really know very well, obviously, I mean, I'm not going to hope. I'm hoping it's not going to be Excel. I hope it's something else. Apart from Excel, like, is there any new financial tool, since you all have been talking about, the new age technologies, AI, ML coming up, data analytic tools coming up? What is that one tool that you believe everybody should really pick up quickly because it's going to become the mainstream tool for finance very soon, or maybe it is already? Animesh, do you have any thoughts there? You're on mute, I think.
Okay. Arjun, you already banned, I cannot say Excel, but trust me, when people say that they know Excel, I can assure you 1 out of 1,000 person actually know Excel, because Excel can do wonders for you. It have Power Query features. You can actually use it as a database. You can automate a lot of stuff. Whatever we are talking right now, that was always there in Excel. People just don't use it. But I believe Power BI is another tool which I found to be quite good. But again, to be very honest, my experience is, unless tool is used properly, no tool is good. If any tool is used properly, the tool is good. So it depends on people using the tool the way it is supposed to be, the processes supporting both people and the organization to use it, the tool, in the right way, and then obviously technology coming together, integrating all the data sources in the organization. So people, process, system, all have to go hand in hand.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, no, I think that's definitely relevant. I'm glad you still pointed out the importance of Excel. I understand. I think most people focus so much on Excel, even though they don't always know the right functions to use or the right
Because using the Excel and learning the Excel are two different things. Let
two
me put
different
it
things.
that way. Most of
Completely
us
agree.
are using it for 15 years, but we are doing very limited set of functions in Excel.
No, that's very true. That's very true. Although I wonder, Animesh, given that Microsoft is sort of leading the charge today in AI/ML, like how they are going to be rolling out those co-pilots that they have been talking about within Excel or within other business applications that they have to change the game. How people had been using those formulas for decades now might be looking very different. So I think even within Excel, even if you're a power user today and you're in the top 5% users, you might have to revisit your skills if these kind of
Absolutely,
functionalities change.
absolutely. you don't have to remember formulas anymore. Let me put it that way. So that part is gone. So again, now how do we use it? Because for example, Power BI integration with Excel is actually now becoming real. You can have a lot of work. You can make those charts directly into Excel if you have a Power BI plugin enabled. And now I believe the talks are already in play. Most likely, Chat GPT plugin will also come for Excel very soon. So those talks are already in the industry. So Excel is gonna stay, but how we use the Excel, that's definitely gonna change with all these new tools coming into play.
Yeah, yeah. No, fair enough. I think that's a great answer. I think I was looking for a one-dimensional answer, but you gave a much more multi-dimensional one, which is really what's needed to help people understand the state of affairs today. Pranav, any thoughts on your end from like a tool perspective that you believe people should really learn today?
Yeah, so more importantly, like what I feel, people should get at least a basic understanding of all the analytics tools that are available because every company has its own requirement. Like some are using Power BI, some are using Google Looker, and so on. But at least you should essentially understand like how you can well use these particular data points because at the end of the day, you need to give the inputs that this is the data or this is the format in which I want to present a particular thing. Like, for example, I want to create a CEO dashboard, which essentially gives me real-time updates on my bookings in ARR, my SQL to MQL conversion, and so on and so forth. But those inputs, like what are the things to be considered, not considered, essentially would come from a finance person to, let's say, a person who is from a business intelligence background. That can only come once you understand that what are the things which are possible out of these dashboards, how you can make it real time automated. So I feel that somewhere, especially for the folks who are in 0 to 5 years kind of a career horizon, they should get a bit of hands-on experience on either one of these two. And the second thing, which is one of the a bit more underrated skill, is learning a lot more about the financial modeling, because that is something many people are still not going over there. While it is all Excel based, a lot of things have been automated, but at the end of the day, you need to understand the rules of financial modeling, get the basics correct, because that is something which is going to help you in the long term as well. So let's say if there is a due diligence happening or an M&A deal going on, well, you may not have to create a financial model, but you need to understand how it is being made so that you understand what assumptions are being considered, whether it is making sense, not making sense, whether the valuation of the company is going in the right direction or not. Those are some of the things which will take time to get replaced by a software or a tool or something. So that is a skill which I feel every corporate finance person should at least get once in their initial 0 to 5 years journey.
Understood. Understood. All right. So I think that was helpful. I hope people were able to understand, the key trends from a skills perspective or, corporate requirements or employee requirements perspective. Just want to switch gears a little bit here now. And Akash, thanks for your question. We'll take that up soon. I think a couple of people have directly sent me questions as well. So I'll share those with Animesh and Pranav as well. The next thing that I want to talk about is more in regards with the state of the current job market and how competitive it is out there, because that's really our bread and butter, right? I mean, you guys know you have been helping people in terms of coaching, mentoring them, or helping them land their target roles. It's not that easy as it was few years ago, at least relatively speaking. There is much more competition because each role is getting hundreds of application. There are fewer openings out there given the recent layoffs that have happened, and it's an employer's job market today more than an employee's, right? So the first thing that I wanted to ask with regard to this topic is it's a fairly broad question. Feel free to answer it in any form or fashion that you think is going to be most helpful for people. But how would you advise candidates today, firstly, on identifying the right opportunities for themselves in the market, especially given where you both are? So we may not necessarily talk about folks at junior level, but mid to senior level folks. Where do they find the best opportunities for them? Because if you just go on LinkedIn or any random job portal, there aren't that many openings. over the last 1 or 2 years. So what's the best way to identify the right opportunities? Animesh, any thoughts on that?
So Arjun, that's an interesting question because I'll tell you from my own journey what I have seen. At the junior level, these job portals are actually helpful. But once you are outside that 5 year plus bucket or maybe 7 years plus bucket, the job portals are not that helpful. You will find a lot of opportunities, and most of the time you will not get a call back. So that's where your network, which you create as part of your journey from 0 to 7 years, that become extremely important. Second is how you have differentiated yourself over that 7 years. That is one of the most important aspect, because I'll tell you the most difficult thing is to get a call back. Converting the call is an easier task if a person is good, but getting a call back is more difficult. So how have you differentiated yourself is also very, very important, because we have to, let me put it very bluntly, we have to sell ourselves, that we are also a product, and we have to sell ourselves to the potential recruiter that why they should buy this product, why not anything else which is available in the market. So the differentiator has to be there, and that will come from the achievements or the impact which you have created throughout your journey, and obviously the visibility in the port in on, for example, on LinkedIn, or your achievements, your network. And I believe consultants also play a very, very important part of this particular ecosystem. And consultant, again, it depends. There are paid consulting opportunities, and in few cases consultants will directly reach out to you. But so your network, your visibility, and the impact which you have created throughout your journey, and the consultant, these are the three things I believe at 7 to 15 years bracket is something which makes a difference when you are hunting for a job.
Got it. That's helpful. I think in terms of the avenues, what different avenues to explore, I think that makes a lot of sense. Pranav, I think, just going back to the first part of our discussion where we were talking about different roles, different types of opportunities existing today, and then new career options, let's say more, tech-driven ones or financial modeling ones that are coming up. How should one identify the right openings? Like, for example, if I'm somebody who's looking to broaden my horizon beyond just accounting or auditing, but still stay within corporate finance. What kind of companies should I be targeting? Or at least, how should I think about researching companies and openings so that there is some good overlap between my experience and the employer requirements, but at the same time, I'm going for a step up in my career. It's not completely at a lateral position because that defeats the purpose of the change.
No, I think in like a couple of options which Animesh mentioned, honestly, that is something that you should target for. But at the same point in time, like how I usually used to approach, let's say I'm at a managerial level and I want to get to the senior managerial level. What I would essentially do is I used to go through some of the profiles on LinkedIn with similar industry, similar domain, let's say senior manager FP&A or senior manager business finance. I used to understand what their journey has been like. What has that person been doing, which essentially helped that person to become a senior managerial level. At the same point in time, I would also go through some of the job descriptions of the similar industry or maybe closer to that industry and try and understand what are the expectations of the recruiter or the hiring manager for that particular role. So that essentially helps me understand what are the things that I need to work on to so that it helps me to grow from a manager to senior manager level. At the same point in time, it helps me customize my CV as well. Because many times what people do is that they have a very standard format of CV and they apply left, right, center for 15 jobs in a day. That should not be the approach. Like what I feel that they should have a specific CV for those specific roles so that when the person or the ATS is essentially scanning your CV, you get those specific keywords which they are looking for, and it helps to at least filter out the first level of your hiring journey. So these are some of the things. While obviously LinkedIn, Naukri.com, SIAM jobs, these are the things which are always there. At the same point in time, as Animesh mentioned, partnering with all these different consultants which are there. Some are well established, some are again very startup kind of a journey in the recruitment consulting firms as well. So these are some of them are very niche into finance, startups kind of an environment. So you can tap into those kind of specific consultings also, so that as and when they have something which is coming their way, they can approach you. Okay, hey Pranav, this is something which we have found out. If you are interested, let us know, or if you can refer somebody. So that's how you create your own network within the specific domain industry where you feel that you want to grow in your career. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah,
I'm not too
absolutely.
sure.
I
Okay.
think that was helpful. Definitely. I think the personalization aspect is something which is, reiterated by a lot of coaches and, folks like us, but still the point is missed because I think it's become so easy to apply for jobs, especially with the single click button, where
Yeah.
you just need to apply by, I think just clicking one button takes 2 minutes. I think people have fallen for that trap. They feel it's easier to apply, so they should go ahead and do that. But they are experiencing fewer callbacks, right? I mean, we've seen a lot of people who have come to us and said they got less than 2% or less than 3% callbacks on hundreds of applications that they have made, right? I mean, in the long term, it's proving to be more wasteful, more inefficient to do that, right? Even though in the short term, it might feel you are achieving a lot. So I think that makes sense, Pranav. So, we have a question, a very good question rather here from Akash. It's a fairly contextualized journey that he has shared, and it's in regard with the fact that, he has about 7, 8 years of experience within FP&A corporate finance, and recently he's been applying at startups in Series B, Series C kind of a stage. And a lot of startups today are looking for very demanding skill sets, meaning people who have sophisticated experience, high level experience in finance to be able to, let's say, raise funds and manage your entire finances, your accounting, your books, etc. But they are not willing to, let's say, pay at a CFO level rate because of budgetary concerns or other things. So I think that's a typical fact pattern we are seeing today because again it's an employer's market, so employers are able to dictate the terms to some extent with regard to what they want from the employee, but not always giving the the right kind of compensation or other rewards, title, etc. So I think this question is more around um, how does somebody manage or navigate this kind of an opportunity, right? Where you are getting good exposure, good experience to function at a high level, but you're not getting the quote unquote CFO title or that level of compensation, which is considered commensurate with the impact they're expected to create. And I think it's a good question, but very specific one. Happy for either of you to take it up, Pranav or Animesh.
Yeah, so, Arjun, like typically when you look from a startup perspective, right? Like Series B, Series C kind of a startup, they look somebody from a very who has a generalistic experience rather than being a very specific experience because they want somebody to do a little of everything. Like you need to have a basic understanding of how the accounts payable, accounts receivable function works. At the same point in time, you should be in a position to have a little bit of FP&A slash business finance expertise as well. They essentially are not in a position to obviously afford somebody at a CFO kind of a level, but they want somebody who can do a little of everything. And as and when the company grows, that person, that role from a, let's say, a VP finance will eventually go into a CFO kind of a role. So these are some of the aspects which, let's say, a founder of a startup would essentially look at when they are hiring somebody from a finance role perspective. Now, when you are essentially applying for such roles or applying the founder for such roles, you can show that confidence that while you wouldn't have worked on all of these aspects, but you have that urge of learning, you are adaptive to that kind of an environment. Show them that what is your like a 30, 60, 90-day plan looking like if you were to join that particular startup at a very initial level. So you also have to empathize with the founder's journey because that person has also taken a bet for his startup to grow, and now he's taking bet on each and every hiring. So that is where it's very important in startup that you have the right hiring who understands not only the business, but at the same point, the culture of the company. And you cannot afford to have a person who is like not a right fit in a, especially in a startup environment, because you are working with a very few set of people, and every person's effort is very important and it reflects in the performance of the startup. So those are some of the things which are important when you are essentially interviewing for a startup. And think from a founder's perspective is what usually I say. At the same point in time, if you feel that compensation is something not commensurating to what you are expected, then you can obviously ask for more ESOPs over there, because that is something which showcases that you have the skin in the game, that you want to excel along with the company no matter what. So these are some of the things when you essentially look for applying for a startup kind of thing.
That was a very well balanced answer. And just for the sake of folks who may not be aware exactly what ESOPs are, even though it's very common in startups, ESOPs are employee stock option plans. Basically, they help you get ownership in the company from shareholding standpoint. And it's again, it's very common for startups to provide heavy weightage in your compensation on ESOPs because they want you to drive the valuation of the company. That's where the big rewards come in. So Akash, I hope that was helpful for you. And I think with regard to the second question, similar to Pranav, what you were answering just now, he has asked about the fact that once you work for a startup, you typically get a higher compensation, and then it's hard to transition to more mature, established companies who cannot match that level of compensation. I think in my experience, that's primarily because of the ESOPs, right? If ESOPs have worked well, then you have gained a windfall, you have gained a lot of monetary benefits. But startups by their nature are high risk, high reward, right? So when you're going to a startup, typically you're betting that something which has low chances of succeeding will succeed, and for that you are rewarded well. When you go into a mature organization, it's a different type of risk reward profile, right? There are lower risks, it's an established organization. Um, and so the rewards are also commensurate. There's lower ESOPs, higher fixed compensation. Again, it's a very specific question. Animesh, would you like to take this one up with regard to transitioning from, let's say, startups to established companies, or how to think about comp when you are making these kind of transitions?
So, how I see it, Arjun, as you have rightly pointed out, it's all about ROI. The risk and reward ratio is very different when you work for a startup versus an established company. So, how I see it, if one really want to learn everything of finance, if they want hands-on exposure in terms of going through most of the functions on their own, then startup is the way to go. So early in your career, we should aspire to be part of a startup so that we can learn a lot of things. Once we have achieved a certain level of experience, then only we should think about moving to a large organization, because from my own experience in large organization, learning is limited, but where it helps is to understand and learn the industry best practices, because processes are established. So I'll say opportunity to make a difference will be much lesser. And I believe for most of us as professional, that is the biggest driver which motivates us, that are we making a difference? Are we learning something new? So that is something which startup will give you. But in a big organization, you will learn the industry best practices. And then if you ask me, then moving to a startup even makes more sense. And that's where the discussion, which initially we were talking, how to be a CFO, then I believe that's what makes you a much better equipped to become a CFO, because one have a hands-on experience, then one also know industry best practices. So I don't see a reason that why one is not ready to become a CFO, and give it time. So only thing that I'll suggest, if a startup is or a company is not offering you CFO right away, join that. If you believe the profile is good and the ladder is there for you, go prove yourself, because it's much easier to prove yourself inside an organization compared to uh, proving yourself to an organization which doesn't know you. So having that patience and faith in your capabilities is also very, very important.
Well said. Well said. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think both of you have given a balanced perspective here, because you have not just talked about things from the candidate's point of view, but also the company or the founder's point of view. And I think that's how people should think, right? Because we are in our shoes already. We know what we want, but we seldom think about what the other side of the table wants. And I think in these kind of job search scenarios, it's very important to put yourself in the recruiter or the founding team shoes. So I think that's very helpful. Um, Now, just in terms of some of the other questions that we have been getting, one of the most important things, which I think has been broadly touched upon by both of you, is the importance of positioning your profile very strongly in resume and your perhaps LinkedIn profiles as well, right? I think I can't remember, Animesh, if it was you or Pranav, but you mentioned it's critical that you showcase your achievements, right? It's not just about your responsibilities. You should be focusing on your achievements as well. Let's say I'm somebody in accounting, and this is a question that came directly to me. But let's say I'm somebody in accounting role, right? I have been, reviewing statements and making sure they are accurate and everything's comprehensively captured, all of that. Now, a lot of times people are not able to say that I drove revenues or I drove the bottom line or helped even do that, right? To a large extent, they feel like they don't have that kind of impact if they're in those kind of roles. And they feel this lack of visibility in their impact on the organization, right? So how do you showcase your achievements exactly when you are building your CV, especially in these kind of, so either one of you, Pranav, would you like to take a stab? Since I'm just alternating, but really feel free to answer whoever thinks is better equipped to do this. So.
No, I think when essentially you want to highlight your achievements, think from a perspective like how can you differentiate your CV compared to the other like 100 candidates who are applying for the same role? What makes it more favorable for you in that particular role, which can help you to convert that particular application of yours into a job interview? So specifically, don't talk about the business as usual activities as your achievements, like something like if you are essentially doing some weekly analysis, creating budgeting versus variance analysis, budget versus actual. So those are business as usual. Talk about something where you would have essentially, let's say, partnered with the head of sales to build a revenue forecasting model. Let's say you worked on a particular M&A deal, worked on fundraising. These are some of the things which are true achievement, which essentially uh, showcases your CV as an outlier compared to other CVs which are essentially being applied in the particular job role. Keep it very concise. Don't make it a bit too repetitive. Let's say some of the jobs that you would have done over a period of time in your previous company and this existing company may be repetitive in nature. So those kind of things you can essentially avoid because there are certain basic expectations from a particular role that this is something that you would obviously be knowing. So let's say if you're applying for a head of accounts payable, so the hiring manager obviously knows that you would be aware of certain basic reconciliation, certain steps that you need to consider. Then you need to focus on some of the softer skills that you would have essentially worked into, uh, working on some automation project that reduce the number of days in processing a payment. Those kind of things essentially as in shows your CV kind of a step up compared to the other people who have applied for those roles. I think those are softer things. A lot depends on the job description that you're applying for because every company has its own specific requirements. Based on that, what you feel that you have done over a period of time, don't bluff around in your CV because eventually it turns out to be a very bad experience for the hiring manager. Talk about something that you have already worked into. Don't put in imaginary or fascinating stuff because over a period of time, people will come to know and that will be a negative impact on your future career.
I think if I can slightly add, and I think Pranav captured it well. That first of all, value system is non-negotiable. So don't bluff in your CV if you have not worked on something. So that is paramount for any finance professional. And I totally agree that showing achievements is very, very important because at the end of day, if one is doing accounting job, one is expected to know the technicals of how to be an accountant, and that's where the hundreds of CV will be there in the market. So, but as an accountant, how were you different? What different you did for the organization? Did you identify something which brought some savings to the organization? Did you automate a process which actually helped in better reporting or eventually reduce the time to report? Or did you come out with a dashboard which was more relevant for management to take some decisions? So how did you create that an impact? That is, I believe, is a very, very important part. And also, in your resume, I believe it also depends what part of career you are in, because how you make a resume in first 5 years of your career will be very different in 5 to 15 and above 15 bracket. Because under 5, obviously your education still stays relevant. What kind of background you are coming from, your education, your skills along with the achievement, all those things becomes relevant. But once you move to 5 to 15 bucket, education is still important, but it's not the highlight of the day. What is highlight of the day is all the achievements which you have earned throughout your journey, what kind of impact which you have created. You need not mention the skills that you are bringing to the table, because the achievements will highlight that for you. So your education will maybe come on the second page for that matter. Just to give an example, so how you position yourself is also a function of that at what stage of a career you are in. I hope I answered what, Arjun, you were looking for.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think some of the points that you have shared are very, very relevant, and I do hope that in today's environment, even though there are just many more candidates than there are openings, I think if people start to actually take these to heart, they can improve the callback rate significantly from employers. So I think these are all good tips. And like I said, we will be recording this and sharing this in our community. So it would be helpful to a lot of people. The last thing that I just want to, I think, broadly touch upon is, at the time that you both have, recently, let's say, had a job search experience, um, whether it was at the initial stage of trying to get more callbacks, or it was more in terms of converting interviews into full-time offers, um, what were again the one or two biggest challenges that you face, and how did you address those specific challenges? I think we have spent quite a bit of time talking about the callback, in fact, but if there is anything that we haven't covered there, or anything from an interview perspective which you think people should be doing to showcase the value they bring to the table, what are some of those things you would emphasize based on your personal experience, Pranav?
I think Animesh unmuted. Animesh, you can go. It's okay.
Okay, sure.
No, that's
Animesh,
completely fine. Pranav, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay. Uh, uh, so essentially, Arjun, when you first, I'll take the interview question that you were asking for. So in the interview, like more importantly, before you go for an interview, have a thorough background understanding about the role, about the company, about the industry, because these are something a lot of people miss out when they essentially go for an interview. They just feel that it will be a just a Q&A kind of a session, but that's not the case in most of the cases, especially when you are slightly in a senior managerial or and above kind of a role. So people expect you to know before the interview that what is the company doing, what are the things that the company is essentially looking for in this particular role. You essentially also need to understand certain basic industry benchmarks, KPIs. So before you go into the role, you are already aware about a lot of things that you could essentially talk about during your discussion. And somewhere you could relate to some of the experiences that you would have done in your previous company or existing company that can relate to the future job experience, so that the person feels that you are not only essentially gathered information about the role about the company, but at the same point in time, you're showing a lot more inclination towards the next step that you want to take in your career path. So those are some of the very softer things. Don't keep it a very Q&A kind of a session. Uh, Keep it more interactive. And sometimes if there are certain questions which are being asked to you, you can always take a couple of moments to think through and then answer those kind of questions. You are not expected to know everything under the sun that you are being asked for. So it's okay to not know rather than again beating around the bush. So these are some of the softer things which are important, obviously over and above the technical skills which are expected from a particular role.
So, if I can add to what Pranav has just said, I think three more things which I believe are helpful. So, first of all, obviously, doing homework about the organization and profile goes without saying. That's a pretty basic. But we should always remember we are interviewed by a person. We are interviewed by a human. So, always do your background research on the interviewer itself, how that person's journey is throughout the career. When did they become part of that organization? Why did they join the organization? Whatever inputs you can derive, because that always helps you to understand that what kind of questions you can expect from that interviewer. So that always helps to be better prepared, because at the end of the day, we are humans first. Second thing, which I believe is something which helps, because what happens at the time of interview, there is always a pressure involved. No matter how confident we are, structuring our thought, putting it in a concise manner is never an easy task. So it never hurts to have your own Q&A, maybe in a Word doc prepared, that what kind of standard questions, because 80-90% of the interviews will have the standard questions. Obviously, the way it is framed can be different, but answers will be same. So please do have those written out, read those, refresh those, because at the time of the actual interview, the pressure will not allow you to frame those questions in your mind if you are already not structured your thoughts. So that is two. And third, I believe, which is very, very important, which most of the candidates miss, is when you are given an opportunity to ask a question, do you have any question for me? That, I believe, is the most important event throughout that interview, because that's where you have a free hand in which direction you want to take that interview. How do you ask something which an interviewer feel is relevant? It can be as simple as that what are what will be my KPIs? How will you evaluate success of this role? Because that is something will give a feeling to your interviewer that you are actually interested in that role. So asking that question in a right way, or it can be as simple as, why did you join that organization, to get that insight that is it a right fit for me? So using that opportunity is also very important when you have an option to ask a question. So please always have those questions prepared in advance before you go for an interview, that what are you planning to ask interviewer.
Yep. All right. I think we have come up on our time and have covered most of the key things that we are looking to discuss. And really, really thankful to both you, Pranav, and Animesh, for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the session. Um, any parting thoughts before we wrap it up? Pranav, we'll go with you first. And parting thoughts in terms of things that, again, like it could be a highlight from everything we have discussed, or something new that we haven't covered.
No, nothing in specific, but I think the kind of platform that Pivot has created, it's really helpful. I can see a lot of positive feedbacks coming from the discussion that I've had with a lot of different mentees. I think that's an amazing way for them to understand, especially for people who are coming from a very different background. Uh, so they get a reality understanding that while they would be expecting X, whether it is possible, not possible. So I think that's a very great job that you all guys are doing, and I hope that it keeps on growing, not just in India, but also at an international level, because there's a big gap, especially for people who are in senior managerial role and aspiring to go to the next level. So a lot of confusion happens over there, what to do, what not to do, how to navigate their career path. So this is something very important, and it's going to be a lot more changing. So even if they interact with people like Animesh and me and couple of others, they get a lot more different perspective, reality check about what's happening on the ground and what they should be doing to improvise themselves, upskill themselves, and then change their course in the horizon. I think that's the only closing thoughts that I have.
Great. Thank you so much, Pranav. Really appreciate that. Animesh?
So I completely echo to what Pranav said. I believe Pivot is providing a great platform for people to find the right path in the right way, because I believe for most of us, it has been a struggle of finding it in our own way. So it is kind of bringing people who have been through this journey and people who are going through this journey. So I definitely echo. It's a great platform. And if I can just say that two things which is very, very important for all of us as professional, that first of all, we have to be a lifelong learner. That's what I always believed in. And learning has to be abreast with what you are trying to achieve. So what kind of role you want to go in, your learning is also a function of it. But keep on upgrading yourself, because the way technology is changing, a lot of the things which we were doing in the past are getting obsolete very, very fast. So please keep on upgrading yourself. That is very, very important. And whenever we are looking for role change, whenever we are trying to be there at a, always work backwards. So we, all of us know where we are, and if we know where we want to be, always do that gap analysis, that what skills or expertise or learning I need to have, how will to achieve my goal of reaching somewhere. So I know where I am, where I want to be. Do that gap analysis, then accordingly you will figure out what kind of education is required, learning is required. Maybe you have to switch your roles to earn those skills. So these two things, I believe, is something which is very, very important for all of us who are looking to go different places. Let me put it that way. Who are bored of just doing what we are doing since last many years.
No, absolutely. Completely resonate with that, Animesh. I think continuous learning is need of the hour. It's a must have now. It's not just a good to have. So I think makes a whole lot of sense, and I'm very happy to end today's session on that very insightful thought. Thank you again for sharing the depth and breadth of insights based on your rich experiences. I really personally learned a lot, and I hope people who joined and people who are part of our community will too. um, Folks who are in the room or folks who see this video, please feel free to join Pivot and get connected to professionals like Pranav and Animesh, who are ready to provide one-on-one mentorship and help you achieve your career goals. It's one of the most effective ways to get over any big dilemmas you might be facing in your career. As you heard from them, the journey alone can be slightly siloed and more challenging. So make use of this opportunity, and thank you again, everybody, for joining. Have a good rest of your evening.
Thanks, Arjun, and thanks, Animesh. It was nice interacting with
Thanks,
you.
Pranav. Thanks,
Thank
Arjun.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thanks everyone. Bye bye.